Jazzcast Pros.
Today's episode is all about learning how to tell your story. So oftentimes in developing relationships and reevaluating relationships and struggling or learning, I don't need to struggle, but learning to find your voice and show up as your authentic self, many of us choose to tell our story as a part of relating, as a part of letting those that we care about and those that care about us know who we really are. And sometimes that storytelling can be a little too much to share in its entirety. So in this episode, you will learn a 5-step process to sharing your story. Welcome to the Healthy Illness Podcast. The Healthy Illness Podcast is all about helping you build healthier relationships while living with mental health conditions. My name is Kelly Marie. I am your podcast host, your doula, your mindfulness guide. I am your mental health and wellness person. So I want to start with a shout out. This is the end of Mental Health Awareness Month, and I have not really talked about it, but wanted to just uplift Annette Pender and Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine and thank them for featuring me and a part of my story in the May edition of the Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine. If you have not grabbed one from a Tops or Wegmans, please do so in the next couple days because they'll be gone forever and ever. You can also get them online on their website, buffalohealthyliving.com maybe. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm definitely sure that if you just Google Buffalo Healthy Living Magazine, that the magazine will show up there and you can check the current edition. So for the month of May, you'll see my face, or previous editions. If you check it out after the month of May, you'll have to go back to previous editions and look for my face, and I'll be there. But there is a way to tell your story. And there's a way to do that without harming others, but also with being able to share who you are. When we build relationships across the spectrum of relationship types, they are formed and built upon who we say we are and who we show up to be in those relationships. And as we grow, as we age, as we mature, as we heal, as we learn more about the world and ourselves, sometimes it's necessary to share your story. Sometimes it's necessary to reshare in a way that shows your growth and healing. And there's a way to do that, again, so that you are being your authentic you, but also so that you are not doing harm, that you're not hurting others in that sharing. So 5-step process. And I actually learned this. I am a mental health first aid for adults and for youth instructor. And in our training, they offer this anagram. Anyways, it's a something. And we're going to use this something to better understand and sculpt your story. And so in this mental health first aid training where, it's a train the trainer class and they taught us, just the curriculum, but how to personally share our stories, but also when others begin to share their stories, how to, kind of coach them in that space to ensure that it is appropriate and isn't doing harm to the storyteller and the listeners of that story. And so the 5 steps, it's the word story. So super easy to remember. So in sharing your story, remember story. S is keep it short. T make it trauma-free. O, hours to tell. R, relevant to whatever it is you're talking about. And Y, you're emotionally able and ready to share. So I'm going to dive into each of those. See, you're not out here, hurting people or yourself when you're trying to build these healthier relationships. And so there is no judgment in who we are, where we've been, the experiences that we've had, the decisions that we've made. Here we are. We're here today. Can't change yesterday. It is what it is. And as you open up to those that you care about and care about you, again, you may find yourself in a storytelling situation. Now, some of the best ways to learn lessons and the best ways to relate to people is through storytelling. It has been how histories have been passed through generations, how we have been able to keep culture alive when written language is either not available or unsafe. Storytelling is a way to connect to people. It is a way to connect to ourselves. And so there is power in telling your story. I actually learned some of these points the hard way because there was no guide to storytelling. There was no one telling me, you know, don't use certain words or think about, should you use certain words in telling your story? Do you need to tell this part of your story? Is it necessary? Is it trauma free? Right. And so I'm thankful that I was, able to be in this space of learning a whole curriculum around mental health and mental well being, but also that in one of the trainings, they brought up this acronym around remembering how to tell your story. So S, the S in story stands for short. Keep the story short. I know that I have experienced this, and I don't know if you have, but there have been times where, you're at an event or with, people that you care about, and they're telling a story and it just goes on and on and on, and it doesn't seem to have a point. And like you're getting all the details, but the details don't seem to be relevant to what's happening, right? And so keep the story short. You don't want to monopolize the conversation. And in keeping it short, I'm not saying that you shouldn't share the details that are necessary, that you shouldn't provide context. I'm not saying that. Don't keep it so short that the story doesn't make sense. But was it necessary to talk about the color you had on? If maybe that was, right? Depending upon the story and the purpose for you telling, maybe that was the whole purpose in telling the story. But there is a way to say what you need to say, but to be short, be succinct. Allow for the other person to receive what it is you're saying, to absorb what it is you're saying. And longer stories tend to miss that. And so I'm not talking about, stand up comedian here, right? When I say keep it short, I'm talking about you're in a personal conversation with friends or family or, again, people that care about you. You're on the phone talking to folks. You want to keep it short to honor the story, but also honor the person that you are talking to. So S is keep it short. T. So remember, we're going story, STORY. T, keep it trauma free. And so you have to kind of know the other person that you're talking to. If it's a larger group, know the group that you're talking to in this storytelling. I'll use the example of I was at the Child Advocacy Center event last fall up in Niagara Falls. And the whole purpose in me being there was sharing my story to a group of professionals who specialize in child abuse. And that audience, because of their training and why I was there for their conference, the type of learning that needed to occur, I was able to share things with that group that I wouldn't share at like a church group or even with my friends and family. I'm not hiding that from them, but parts of it can be triggering and traumatizing. And I don't want to hurt anyone. My goal in sharing the story is letting people see another side of me, but without hurting the person that is on the receiving end of that. And so you may want to, let people know, I don't want to use the word trigger warning, but, sensitive, this may be a sensitive conversation. Are you okay if I tell you about the abuse that I, suffered as a kid? Like, you can give some heads up about what the story is going to be about to let the listener know whether or not they're in a space to receive. That's kindness, compassion, and empathy in you even telling your story. So keep it trauma free. Everybody doesn't need to know everything. And there's some parts of your story that might be relevant or necessary or make sense to tell one group of people, but not to tell another group of people. Ours to tell. So one of the things that I am acutely aware of, I'll say, is that my story, I'm 49, so the story is 49 years old, my part anyways, and there's story to the story before me being born, right? But I wanna make sure when I'm telling my story that I'm not pulling in anyone unnecessarily, and that what I'm telling is mine to tell. So in me telling my story, I'm not telling you about what I may know about other people. I'm not giving you names. I'm not sharing anything about my story, even though it's mine. I'm not sharing anything about my story that might identify other people. I'm only sharing what's mine to tell. And so you might have to think about the words you're using. You might need to say the story out loud to yourself. You might need to write it down so that when you get to the telling, you are not sharing parts that are really not for you. You don't want that are really not yours to tell. You don't want to tell parts of the story again that identify other people that are not even relevant really to the story. Um, and sometimes parts of a story may be very relevant, but it's not yours to tell. And so honor the other people that may be connected to your story. It may mean you're not telling the whole story because parts of it are not yours to tell. And that's okay. It's not about um, garnering attention. It's not about look at me. It's about sharing a part of you to be able to build healthier, stronger relationships. And so what does that mean? Make sure that what you're telling is yours to tell. Relevant. Okay, I'm good for a tangent. Like, I don't think a story is good unless I, take you out the way to bring you back. But it still needs to be relevant. Is the story you're telling relevant to the conversation? If someone is sharing their story, like, do you want to jump in and tell your part? This not the story. It wasn't for you to share your story. This is about someone else sharing their story. And if you do interject or if you do support what someone else is saying or want to add to the conversation, is it really relevant? And so there are times I sit back because I know that there's something might feel it's better to share than what's being shared or more relevant to me, but is it relevant to the group? Is it relevant to the conversation that's happening? And that is going to change depending upon the topic, depending upon who's in the room, depending upon the point of the storytelling. It may be in alignment, but is it relevant to you? Is your sharing of the story relevant to the conversation that's happening at the time? So that relevancy has, more than one angle, right? And then finally, why? Why the letter Y in story is, are you emotionally able to share? So why you're emotionally able to share. You don't want to be in a position where you start telling your story and you become so overwhelmed that instead of your story uplifting someone, that person now has to comfort you. I want you to consider the context of your storytelling in the are you emotionally able to share? Because you may not be in a position to say the words out loud. By position, you may not be in an emotional position to share your story or to share your part of the story. Have you done the work to be emotionally okay to share the story? You don't want to pour out all over other people and then they have to do fixing, right? Now, if you're in your therapy appointment, I mean, like that's where you have the emotional support to be able to tell the story. This really is about being out in the open, being with friends and family or out in groups or wherever you may be in a workshop or learning environment. If you're at work and you go to share a story, you don't want to, burst into tears in the workplace. Tears are not bad. I'm all about feeling all the emotions, right? But I hope you understand what I'm saying when I say, are you emotionally able to share? Also, keep in mind, this really is for instructors, for facilitators, for people leading group discussions and things like that. But it is relevant to everyday life and can be applicable to any conversation, to be honest. So, are you emotionally ready? Have you done the work? Can you tell the story without needing assistance, emotional assistance? I was in a training once and I ended up being the shoulder that the facilitator needed to cry on because they couldn't handle the story that was being told, right? Like, so make sure that you are emotionally capable and able to share the story so that you then are not requiring others to come to your assistance. That does not mean you can't cry or that the story can't be emotional or that it doesn't elicit, emotions from others. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is you do not want to do harm to yourself emotionally by sharing a story. You also do not want to do harm to others by pulling from them. That goes back to that trauma free piece, but also you being emotionally able to share, to carry the weight of what comes to you based upon you sharing of that story. Now, I am not a therapist. I am not a clinician. These are just ways that I have learned throughout my career in doing this work, how to build healthier relationships, right? That's what we're talking about in this space. And so, again, if you are in a environment where storytelling and you sharing your story is a part of being in that space, you're you're not just at the grocery store, opening up to a friend, right? Like, or at dinner, opening up with the, girlfriends over some wine. I'm not suggesting that you be closed off. What I am suggesting that you do is be prepared with the weight of using your words. To whom much is given, much is required. You cannot take back words once they have left your mouth. They're out there forever. And so in sharing, and I understand that in many families in the Black community, in many communities, the sharing of the story, of your story, of saying things out loud is frowned upon, it's stigmatized, it's maybe chastised for telling your story. Listen, we have to share. We have to say the difficult things. We have to be able to talk about hardships and traumas and atrocities. We have to be able to do those things, but there's a way to do them in a way that is uplifting, in a way that is gracious to the receiver and to you, right? And so this framework for storytelling will help you be able to craft your story and say it in a way, again, that is not harmful to you or to the receivers. That is my 5 cents for the day. 5 cents, 1 cent for each letter in the word story. If you are sharing your story, I'm going to run through them again. You want to make it short, trauma-free. Make sure it's ours to tell, relevant, and you're emotionally able to share. You're an adult. I want you to be in a safe place personally, but a brave space as well, in being able to share your story. And using these 5 tips, I believe you're better able to share the parts that are necessary to that particular situation. And again, situations may dictate different things, but that you will be able to better share your story using our 5-step model that I picked up from a training a few years ago, but I do use that and it has helped me better tell my story. And you'll see that in the May edition of Buffalo Healthy Living magazine. Again, if it's past May when you're listening to this, it's online. Now, don't forget the first Monday of every month, I am hosting Mindful AF Awareness and Flow, your monthly opportunity to reset in a brave space. We are meeting virtually. Head over to frontseatlife.com/events to register. You have to register for each month, so keep that in mind. Set your timers, what do you call those things? Your event reminders, yes, so that you know to go and register for that month's event, because the link changes every month. But this is an opportunity to spend an hour in a mindfulness practice, guided. We will do different types of mindfulness activities. Each month will be different, even if it's the same. And I encourage you to join us for some judgment-free work in being present. Until the next time, if you need someone to talk to, please dial 988. There are people there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you're looking for resources, you could try 211. You can call them or you can go to them in your browser. I'm going to go on another tangent, which I'm not going to do right now. So until the next time, thank you for joining me here on the Healthy Illness Podcast. I am your host, Kelly Marie. Until next week, be the light.